Thank you, Honourable Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Ministers, Honourable Members of Parliament, and fellow Fijians, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to take the floor to make this ministerial statement, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd like to start by saying to all of us, we should realize how incredibly blessed we are as a nation and as Fijians. We're blessed, Honourable Speaker, sir, because there are thousands, if not millions, of people who are still confined to their homes around the world. People who still don't have the luxury to carry out everyday activities like go to a bar after work or even go to the movies with their families. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm not sure, but I may be the first member of Parliament to actually experience the Fijian quarantine facilities and process. And I can tell you, Honourable Speaker, sir, that it was seamless, and from the time I actually departed Nandi International Airport to when I was transferred to quarantine in one of our government-designated facilities. Not only, Honourable Speaker, sir, did these frontliners show diligence, detail, and professionalism, it was done in the true Buller spirit, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I stand in this august house sincerely thanking those unsung heroes, and not only for the level of care that they actually showed to me, but the countless number of Fijians and visitors alike, Honourable Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, since Fiji's borders closed in March 2020, our focus was on stopping any possible importation and community transmission of the COVID-19 infection, while ensuring that we actually safely bring Fijians back home and resuming safe economic activity. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is not an easy job, but we're doing it anyway, and we're doing it successfully, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is why reckless requests to ask that the curfew be lifted have no place in the current COVID pandemic environment, Mr. Speaker, sir. That particular curfew has been put in place and careful thought has been given to it, Mr. Speaker, sir. We must remember that at the forefront of our minds is the protection of every single citizen in this country. And we are not out of the woods, sir. So these requests that come for curfews to be lifted, you should realize what you're asking for. It is as reckless as you can be at the moment, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have been guided by the Fijian COVID-safe economic recovery framework. It is under this framework, Mr. Speaker, sir, that businesses actually started to open, children returned to schools, domestic and international travel started somewhat, and families were reunited. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Cabinet-mandated COVID-19 Risk Mitigation Task Force, known as the CRMT, has been engaging stakeholders from across all the sectors to help our economic recovery. And under their management, we've implemented, managed, and mitigated risks under each of the three phases of the framework. To date, Honourable Speaker, sir, the CRMT has allowed safe entry of close to 100 pleasure craft under the Blue Lane Initiative, of which 8 were super yachts. That's 400 passengers and crew arriving and currently exploring our shores, Mr. Speaker, sir. With the positive socio-economic impact of the Blue Lane on Denarau, we've also been exploring the potential of Savu as a port of entry, so the benefits that come with it are actually shared. To boost economic activity, Mr. Speaker, sir, investments and business confidence, we've approved 74 applications, which is the 400 high net worth and technical persons under the significant economic value heading. Of these 400, approximately 150 technical experts have entered Fiji to support major capital projects worth over $1 billion, creating employment for more than 600 Fijians. Mr. Speaker, sir, under the academic or education bubble, we've actually facilitated safe entry of the first group of international students with a second expected by mid this year. So we're essentially promoting ourselves as a safe destination to study in whilst engaging in tourism activities. Fiji has also been able to market, Mr. Speaker, sir, its aviation academy by engaging pilots to undertake training in Nandi. And the first batch of pilots successfully completed training in November 2020, with the second anticipated to arrive this month. Mr. Speaker, sir, since the pandemic, film productions in Fiji and generally throughout the world were either postponed or cancelled. In a concerted effort to support our film industry, we've approved a number of productions of film in Fiji, which is expected to generate about $30 million in economic activity. And also, and more importantly, about 400 local jobs. As the Honourable Attorney General mentioned earlier on during the week, sir, Survivor will be filming in Fiji with the crew expecting to arrive in the next few days, sir. They have to stagger the way they actually come because most of the crew are from sitting in different parts of the world. But all done under the guidance of the Ministry of Health. We follow the necessary protocols to protect our own citizens. Mr. Speaker, sir, we've also embarked on the luxury vacation in paradise, where tourists can safely enter and holiday in Fiji, with the quarantine period being part of the holiday experience. Domestically, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have been able to open up restaurants, we open up hotels, open up pubs and bars. In fact, we've had new businesses open up over the past few months. 17 local businesses that previously operated as nightclubs have remodeled and actually opened as taverns and re-employing about 172 Fijians, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, these travel pathways and bubbles were facilitated strictly in compliance with our standard international arrivals protocols, subject to strict entry conditions, COVID-19 pre-departure testing, 14-day quarantine on arrival in government-designated quarantine facilities, and border quarantine exit testing. Mr. Speaker, sir, creating a globally consistent approach to balancing risk mitigation with economic recovery while prioritizing health and safety is not easy, Mr. Speaker, sir. But we have done a phenomenal job. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to actually stress how much work has been put in by the CRMT, the RFMF, the Ministry of Health and Medical Services, and the private sector, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is not easy facilitating and managing safe entry of all these individuals, and it requires a great deal of detail and logistical planning. This is why I say, and I said in the beginning, reckless requests don't do us any good. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we've all heard this week, our Care Fiji commitment and travel ready programs have both recently received global recognition. We've prepared our industry well, and rightfully so, because the world is watching, Mr. Speaker, sir. We should all, every single one of us in this room, every Fijian watching, be proud of what we have actually accomplished, and not just take it for granted. We are extremely lucky, and we are extremely lucky population around the world. Of course, we can never be too prepared, Honourable Speaker, sir. To date, Tourism Fiji has 187 nominated wellness ambassadors, with about 162 of the ambassadors successfully completing the training program. Mr. Speaker, sir, with a significant demand for work from home, a new segment of tourism has actually been realized. Remote workers. Fiji's unique positioning as a COVID-contained tropical destination has given us the opportunity to explore this market. Mr. Speaker, sir, regionally we are in initial discussions with our Pacific neighbours such as Nauru and New Caledonia on establishing quarantine-free travel. Technical working groups will be established to develop operational matters and health system preparedness. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have not forgotten the Bula bubble, in case the other side of the house is actually wondering. Fiji is in high-level discussions with our Australian and New Zealand counterparts to actually see if we can facilitate quarantine-free travel. Again, this cannot happen overnight, and there are a whole host of things to consider, and we will continue to lobby for travel with our largest markets. Mr. Speaker, sir, going forward, we will continue to work with the industry through the Tourism Recovery Team to address operational challenges and border reopening strategies. We'll also continue to refine and align our economic recovery framework to ensure that we actually leverage current positions to stay ahead of other global tourism destinations. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the initial stages of COVID, our most immediate priority was to financially equip those Fijians and businesses who needed it most. The pandemic has affected all, and its impact is actually wide and far-reaching. Mr. Speaker, sir, as government, we cannot be ill-equipped when dealing with this prolonged crisis. We need reforms that consider the long-term needs of our economy if we are to build back stronger. And this government, Mr. Speaker, sir, has the foresight and saw the need much earlier to forge a more sustainable and inclusive way forward. And we have not lost momentum, Mr. Speaker, sir, despite the 2 hurricanes that we've actually just had. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Fijian government in the past 2 years has taken bold steps to implement reforms to make doing business in Fiji much easier. These reforms also, Mr. Speaker, sir, will essentially form the blueprint to our roadmap to economic recovery. Businesses have been freer to try fresh ideas and reconsider margins and get creative in how they actually operate. We want more self-starters, new business activity, more opportunities to do business. That's why we are ensuring our systems and approval processes are streamlined and overall transaction costs and time taken is actually minimized. A key part of our reforms has been a step towards digitalization of the business registration process, bringing tax registration online, with plans to digitalize the building permits process in 1 year. We've also fast-tracked and streamlined the approval process for obtaining a construction permit for commercial or industrial purposes by establishing through the Building Permits Evaluation Committee. We've taken proactive steps to remove the administrative burdens and reduce bureaucratic obstacles to fast-track approval processes, especially for MSMEs. There is now no longer the need, as we all know, for a business license or actual renewal. Mr. Speaker, sir, amongst the most vulnerable and the most important have been our micro and small medium enterprises. Why? Because they are actually the foundation of our economy. Therefore, the accelerated and equitable recovery of the economy must stem from ground up, Mr. Speaker, sir. As earlier alluded to in this Parliament, sir, support to MSMEs has been ongoing. With our targeted programs and focused on those who need it the most, the Fijian government has paid out close to $30 million to more than 5,500 MSMEs as part of the MSME concessional loan. Our hand-holding, advisory and business training has actually allowed us to train over 2,000 MSMEs in the most rural communities, and we will continue to do so, Honourable Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, as policymakers, we must create an enabling environment, equipped with the right resources and access to finance to thrive. There are so many examples that I can provide of how we've made positive impacts, but I'll name a few. One of the successful recipients of the micro-enterprise loan of $7,000 was actually able to purchase some new tools for his business and secure bigger construction jobs, and now keeps 9 Fijians employed in the West. There's a mother of 2 who was actually laid off, who is now able to start a poultry business to sustain an income and support her family. And there was a former finance officer who used to be in hotels. He started a bakery, and that produces 300 bread loaves a day, and looks to expand by adding a second bakery in Raki town, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, these are just some examples of the success. Mr. Speaker, sir, investments, domestic and foreign, are critical for the growth of industries and the introduction of new industries, more so during this time when we actually need new investments. The Ministry has significantly progressed regulatory reforms in the area of investment in response to the needs of the modern investment climate. We will soon have a new investment legislation and structure. Mr. Speaker, sir, also the recently signed Trade and Investment Framework called TIFA with the United States is built on the foundation to enhance economic opportunities for sustainable and inclusive development between the two countries. TIFA will provide a strategic framework and principles for dialogue on trade and investment with an objective to increase economic opportunities between Fiji and the US. It will be an avenue to strengthen cooperation, facilitate market access for goods, and catalyze business-to-business linkages and strengthen capacities in the areas of trade and investment. Mr. Speaker, so the pandemic, coupled with far too frequent natural disasters, is a human crisis and is actually costing lives. This means any development agreement, investment, no matter how big or small, needs to carry with it the principles of sustainability. Fiji, along with Switzerland, New Zealand, Norway, Costa Rica, and Iceland, have launched negotiations on an agreement on climate change, trade, and sustainability. What this means, Mr. Speaker, is we are driving a transformative approach that mutually enforces trade, climate, and environmental policy with sustainability at its core. Mr. Speaker, sir, addressing climate change is and will continue to be Fiji's utmost priority. Fijians have been known as resilient people, but it hasn't always been by choice. Today, it's a matter of survival for us. The hurt that has been caused by tropical cyclones Yasser and Ana has no dollar value and can never truly be measured, sir. When there is a declaration of a state of emergency for cyclone, government shipping services plays a vital role in transportation of officials in business sectors and health experts, utility officers for relief distribution and rehabilitation works. The GSS, Honourable Speaker, sir, has since its existence been deployed to supply essential relief items and supplies to the outer islands and impacted by these storms. We haven't only been connecting islands, but also Fijians would rely on maritime connectivity. Mr. Speaker, sir, the GSS and also private vessel operators have been instrumental in providing relief and emergency items in the aftermath of the tropical cyclones. If we look at tropical cyclones Harold, Yasa, Ana, more than 40,000 people were assisted. More than 30 tons of aid distributed, including food and non-food rations, tarpaulins, tents, hygiene and emergency response kits. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, sir, the GSS has carted more than 2 million litres of water to the maritime islands during the dry and drought season. Mr. Speaker, so the Fijian government has and always will continue to ensure that every Fijian has reasonable access to transportation. The GSS, the Government Shipping Franchise Scheme, provides services to about 10 uneconomical routes, which I've actually mentioned earlier on last year, sir, which is the only means to access goods and services to thousands of Fijians in the maritime region. Government, Mr. Speaker, sir, has invested $2.6 million towards this scheme this year. And through the efforts and commitment of the Fijian government, we've been able to increase the budget for the scheme and increase the number of routes to be serviced. And this is an indication of the importance of our maritime islands to this government. Mr. Speaker, sir, in prioritizing safe passage of vessels post-cyclone, we also work closely with MSAF to ensure our aids to navigation like lighthouses and beacons are in good working order for seafarers. Planned maintenance for the Kao Momo, Wakaya Reef, Levuka, leading lights, North Overlau and Coral Island are actually underway. And we've actually also attended to the lighthouses in Lamy, Momi, Levuka, Navula Passage, North and South Thurston, Lamy Lowerhead and Vio Red Lighthouse. Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji and the rest of the world actually remains in choppy waters due to COVID-19. But we must all stick together because this is a long and hard road, Mr. Speaker, sir. We will continue to link and market Fijian businesses locally and abroad and collaborate with the Fiji tourism sector to ensure accelerated recovery while sustaining livelihoods for all Fijians. I thank you, Honourable Speaker, sir.